Hey everyone, Jordan Smith with VSI by Boss Snowplow. In this video, we're going to go over an in-depth look at the smart connected app control system for a VSI legacy spray system, as well as the wireless remote functions and how to get the most out of your system. So the first thing we're going to do to run our sprayer is connect to it. To do that, we'll turn on the power switch. We'll take out our smartphone or tablet. We'll go to our VSI spray control app, which is for Android and iOS. The first thing that's going to happen is this liability notice is going to come up. This is because obviously the use of smartphones while driving on public roads can be illegal in some states. So read the disclaimer, accept it. Then we're going to go to our details tab on our app and go to the connect button. One of the misconceptions is that people think because this is a Bluetooth device that they'll go to the Bluetooth menu of their phone to connect. It will not work that way. It has to go through the VSI spray control app. So after we hit connect, it'll show all available sprayers. From the factory, it comes up by serial number. So we can connect to that sprayer. If you want to rename that sprayer after you connect to it, you simply hit this edit button and type in whatever name you want. We're going to leave ours as the factory default for now. But some companies like to name them by the truck name, the operator name, or other things. So now that we're connected, we'll stay on this page here and show you our job tracking feature. This is a really nice feature and a really important data set that the sprayer can provide to you and your company. So in order to track jobs, we'll hit start. Type in a job name. I'm going to call it video shoot. If I can spell it right. 1. Now we're tracking a job. So as you'll see, it's time and date stamping the job. It's going to track gallons, acres of coverage, how many gallons come out of the hose reel, so you can track sidewalks separately, what kind of blend was in the system, what the temperature was, and altitude. When you export this report, we'll show you a screenshot of what that looks like in the video here, but it's going to give you a lot more data in addition to this, including GPS waypoints and even who the operator of the spray system was. After we're done with the job, we can add notes to the job. So let's say this site, obviously we didn't track any data because we're just doing a test video here, but let's say this was an actual site and the site looked really good. You can make a comment saying, site looked great. Or more importantly, if there's any negative notes like I tried to spray but there was cars in the way or the site was not plowed well, those would all be good data sets to keep on file. These job reports are really valuable in case there's ever a liability claim of some kind, a slip and fall, or a customer claiming that service wasn't provided and that kind of thing. So having this data set's very important, very valuable. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to talk about how to connect your sprayer to Wi-Fi. In order to do that, we're going to go to the Profile tab. Now I will say that one of the misconceptions with our smart connected sprayers is that your tablet or smartphone has to have Wi-Fi or cellular service in order to run the system, and that's not the case. The only thing we're using Wi-Fi here in this situation is to update the firmware on your sprayer. So if you don't have a smart connected or a network connected device, I should say, you can still run the sprayer as long as that device has Bluetooth. So again, the Wi-Fi connection is only for the sake of updating firmware. If you don't have Wi-Fi on the site you're parked on or the facility you're parked at, that's okay. You can use the hotspot on your phone, or you can drive to a place that has free Wi-Fi, such as a Starbucks, McDonald's, etc. If you do have Wi-Fi at where you park the unit, just be aware that once you connect to Wi-Fi one time and save those credentials, the system will scan every 24 hours and connect to Wi-Fi and update any firmware that may exist. If you don't have that Wi-Fi connection and there is a firmware update, the app will alert you, hey, you need to update your firmware. That's when you can connect your hotspot or to free local Wi-Fi. So in order to connect, we're going to go to scan for Wi-Fi networks. So now it pulls up available networks. I'm going to click on this first one here. It's going to put in the SSID. I have to manually enter the password, the first time only. I'm also going to choose my security setting. It should default to WPA2. That's going to be the most common security setting. Just make sure that you select a setting because if you select none, it may not connect properly. So now that our credentials are in, we're going to click Connect Sprayer to Wi-Fi. It is now saving those credentials into the spray system. So they'll stay in there as long as that password remains accurate. It'll always be able to connect to that network without having to manually do it again. As you see on the screen here, we've successfully connected to our Wi-Fi network. In this case, it's not actually going to do anything because there are no updates to the firmware available. We're on the most current version, which is version 9, as seen in the lower left corner. But if there was an update available, it would start downloading that. You would see a series of flashes on the Argon computer inside the spray control box, and it would say disconnected from sprayer. That's because it's rebooting the computer in order to install the firmware update. The next thing on this profile tab is connecting your wireless remote to your spray unit. These remotes are very easy to connect, and they are universal, meaning that they can connect to any of your VSI sprayers. However, once it's paired with a sprayer, you won't be able to pair it again with another sprayer unless you are okay losing the connection to this one. So let's say we had another sprayer parked next to this one. This remote's paired to this sprayer. This remote will not run the other sprayer unless we pair it to that sprayer. So you can run it on any sprayer, but only one at a time. So in order to pair a remote, we're going to turn the remote on by holding down the power button. So now the remote is on. We're going to click the Pair with Remote button on this profile page. It's going to prompt us to hold the Run Hold button on the remote, which is this upper left button here. So we're going to hold that down. And we're going to hold it down until we get this prompt on our screen on the app that says Success Paired with Remote. So now that we've paired this remote with this sprayer, they are completely integrated together, and the app and the remote will work together. Meaning if you do a button push on the remote, it'll reflect on the app. If you push a button on the app, it's going to reflect on the remote. So they truly work in tandem. You could literally have your phone in one hand, the remote in the other, and they could work together at the exact same time. You can also run the remote independently of the app. So let's say your phone goes dead, something goes wrong, your phone won't connect. You can still run your sprayer with the remote. You just lose a lot of the job tracking and the rate control change settings that you have with the app. So now that we've gone through the basics of connecting to the sprayer and also pairing the remote and connecting to Wi-Fi, let's go through the main operations of your spray system. So in order to operate the sprayer, we're going to go to the Spray tab, which is the main center tab on the application. And you're going to see a screen with a lot of different options, but we're going to go through each and every one of them so you can understand them thoroughly. The first thing is at the top left here, we have our light bar and our strobes. So we can operate those independently of one another, light strobes, or both at the same time, or none at all. The next thing is the status icons. So up across the top of this app, you're going to see a bunch of different data and information. And all of this is very important. Not necessarily that you have to monitor it actively, but if you ever have a problem with the system, check these status indicators because it may indicate what's going on. So at the very top left, we have the name of our sprayer. Again, we have the default name as the serial number of the unit. To the right of that, we have the battery indicator. This is a very, very important one. You'll see it says 12.8 volts. So it says BAT 12.8, that's 12.8 volts. It is green, the status indicator is green. That means the battery's healthy, it's good. If that was yellow, that means you're getting in the danger zone of having a low battery. If it's red, it means you're below recommended voltage and certain features of the sprayer may not work. For example, when your battery drops below 12 volts, the lights will be disabled and the hose reel will not electrically rewind. The only way to remedy this is by running your engine full throttle to help charge the battery up, or by plugging the system in with your no-co charger. Next to the battery is miles per hour. So this is showing you what your active speed is. Obviously it's saying double zeros here because we're stationary. If you're driving, it should be showing a speed indicator. If there's ever a point where you're driving, your auto mode isn't working, look down at your miles per hour. If it's saying intermittent, if it's having intermittent reading, or if it's saying 0, it's possible that you don't have satellite signal. So now if we go to this satellite signal where it says SATS, it says 0. We're inside a steel building. There is no GPS satellite signal here. So because of that, we don't have any ability to measure speed. So if I were to turn on this truck and drive across this building, it wouldn't actually read anything because we don't have any satellite signal. The same thing could happen to you in a parking ramp. So if that ever does happen, you don't have mile per hour reading, you don't have satellite signal, you can still run your sprayer, you're just gonna have to run it in manual mode, and we'll get to what that looks like in a little bit here. The next thing is altitude. So this shows your active altitude and height. This is mostly an informational thing. It's nice to have in the job reports because you can help differentiate between your high elevation and lower elevation job sites. Your heading is your compass. So again, more just informational. It's telling you which direction you're driving. This also could be another indicator that your GPS is not working. If you're not getting a compass reading, it probably means that there's no indication of direction due to lack of signal. The last one is temperature. So it shows 67 degrees here, which is the temperature inside our facility. Obviously, if it was outdoors and it was wintertime, it'd be reading the outdoor ambient air temperature. Again, another nice indicator of knowing what's going to be on your job reports. So the next thing is the auto mode and the manual mode. So auto mode is one of the core features of our spray system. Auto mode is where the system automatically adjusts flow rate based on your speed. So as you'll see with this up and down arrow, as I click it, our GPA, which stands for gallons per acre, is going up and down. So if we were to set it at, say, 80 gallons per acre, and we were to hit our boom sections on, right now it wouldn't be spraying anything because the sprayer thinks it's not moving because it's not moving. So it wouldn't be spraying anything because there is no speed. Automatic rate control always puts down the right amount regardless of your speed, meaning that if you're stopped, it will not spray. So if we were to start moving and we had satellite signal, now we would start spraying out of our boom at the right rate based on our speed to apply 80 gallons per acre. So that's what this up and down arrow does when we're in auto mode. Now if we move to manual mode, which is what we would have to do, you may have heard the valve sections turn on there, that's because I switched from auto to manual mode. But if we were to move to manual mode, now we're not relying on the GPS signal. So if we're inside a parking ramp, if we're having intermittent issues with signal from satellites, we can always run manual mode, which allows us to manually adjust our gallons per minute coming out of the spray boom. So if you look behind me here, we have this proportioning valve with this small dial that's turning. As I hit open or closed, it's opening and closing that valve, which is effectively increasing and decreasing the flow. So as I hold down the closed button, it's closing the valve. If I were to turn the sprayer on right now, nothing would come out because it's completely choked off by that proportioning valve. As I hold down the open button, again, our flow is increasing. And as that indicator moves towards the flow labeling here, now we're at full possible flow. The number of gallons per minute, as shown by this center indicator on the screen, is going to be dictated by which nozzles are hooked up on your boom and how wide open or throttled down your engine might be. So as we talked about, the remote and the app work perfectly in tandem with one another, as can be seen by these boom section button pushes. So as I turn on the boom sections on the app, you'll see that they also light up on the remote. And as I deactivate them on the remote, it's also reflected on the app. So again, they work perfectly in tandem together. And just so you know too, you can run the remote without the app, you just lose some of the features and functionality in terms of changing your rate control or tracking jobs. If you use the app without the remote, you have all the functions, but you don't obviously have the remote and the tactile feel of the buttons. Some people simply prefer the ability to push physical buttons, especially if they're wearing gloves or if they're operating it outdoors or their hands are cold. Also, if your tablet or your phone is mounted inside your truck and you're working outside of your truck doing hose reel work, you probably don't want to demount your tablet or your smartphone and take it out of the truck and take it out in the snow and ice and try to do work that way. Another nice feature here is what's called the run hold feature. So we've had some feedback that people want to be able to turn on and off multiple boom sections at once. With the run hold feature, you can do exactly that. So right now, all 3 boom sections are on. If I hit the run hold button, they all turn off simultaneously. Likewise, on the remote, I have a run hold button up here. As I turn that off, all 3 of them open back up, and again, it's reflected on the app. It also works with just one. You can use run hold section that way. You can also change them while they're turned off so that when you turn them back on, they all turn back on. So it gives you a lot of versatility in how you can control and run the system. The last few features on the spray page are the hose tracking and the ice buster. So the hose tracking is the feature where you can actually separately track your hose reel gallons from your truck boom mounted spray gallons. This is really important if you're using your job reports for billing, because typically sidewalk work is billed out at a higher rate per gallon than parking lot work could be, simply because the additional labor that it takes to do that work. So when you hit the hose tracking button, multiple different things happen. Number one, it changes the tracking on the job reports from the spray boom to the hose reel. Second, it fully throttles up the engine. So in order for our hose reel to work correctly, we need our engine to be at full throttle. That can be a difficult thing to remember. So we've actually made this a default setting. When you click hose tracking, it automatically goes to full throttle. So when you hear that happen, that's not a glitch, that is normal. The ice buster button is sort of like blast mode on a salter. So if you have an area that is exceptionally bad snowpack or bad ice, or an area that you're pre-treating that you want to hit more heavily without having to manually change settings, simply go to your ice buster mode, and that's going to increase the rate to whatever you set it to in the settings menu. And we'll go over the settings menu in a little bit here. Likewise with the hose reel, when you go to the ice buster mode, it will automatically throttle the engine up to full throttle, because more than likely, in order to achieve whatever rate you have ice buster set at, you're going to need the throttle power from the engine to do that. whereas typical spraying, 50 to 75% throttle is enough. So that'll automatically throttle the system up for you. So now we're gonna go to the accessories page. This is where you run your engine and your hose reel. So likewise with the spray page, there are multiple functions on here that also work on the remote control. So you'll see we have choke, you go half or full, throttle 25, 50, 75, 100, gives you some nice adaptability to be able to put the engine right where you want it. We typically say run the engine at the lowest possible RPMs. It's gonna save fuel, it's gonna save noise. It's no problem if you wanna run 100% all the time, but they are pretty small fuel tanks on these systems, so it's nice to save fuel when possible. We also have our starter and our kill switch. So the starter is a hold down feature. So it's not like a push button start in a vehicle. You actually have to hold down the start button to get the engine to crank long enough to start. And same with the kill switch. If you just quickly tap the kill switch, it may not actually fully kill the engine. You have to hold it down to fully arrest the spark in order for the engine to die. Below here we have the hose reel rewind setting. You'll see this little indicator over top that turns it on or off. This is a nice thing to do when you're not using the hose reel, because with a touchscreen it can be easy to accidentally click the wrong button. And if your hose reel is all wound up like this and the gun's put away and we accidentally rewind it, you could end up tearing your hose or tripping the breaker on the circuit board. So I like to turn the hose reel function off when I'm not using it so I don't accidentally bump the button, or if your hands get wet or the screen gets wet, sometimes it can self-activate. So that's why we have that on-off feature there. So likewise, all of these same things can be handled with the remote control. So here, you'll see if you hold down the choke button simultaneously, that will crank the engine. And if you hold down the throttle buttons, that will kill the engine. So it's a 2-button push for start and stop. For throttle and choke, it's simply up or down. So down, up, throttle down, throttle up here. So again, everything you can control on the phone, you can also control on the remote control. So now we'll show you how to actually use the hose reel features. There's 3 different ways to rewind your hose reel. So if we pull our hose reel out here, you'll see if this is locked out, nothing works. But if we unlock it, now we can rewind our hose reel. Likewise with our remote control, this button right in the center right here will rewind the hose reel just like the app would. When I'm out spraying sidewalks, I like to bring the remote with instead of my phone, again, because the tactile button is easier, the remote's weatherproof. I don't have to take the phone out of the holster or the mount in my truck. I can rewind that way. There is one other way to rewind the hose reel, and that's with the physical switch on the circuit board box. And that is right here down below the main power switch. So as I push that button, that's a 3rd different way to rewind our hose reel. The last tab on the VSI Spray Control app is our settings menu. So this last tab here has a bunch of different settings, most of which you'll never actually touch. It's very important if you have staff using these spray systems to let them know that the only settings that they should be doing anything with are the top 3. So the first one is the tank size. This will come set factory default from the factory. So this is a 305-gallon sprayer, thus my tank size says 305 gallons. Now the only exception to this rule is that if you buy a power bundle, we don't know what size tank you're hooking that to. So let's say this was a power bundle and it was going to be hooked to a 1,000-gallon tank. I would simply increase my gallons to 1,000 on my app, and I would hit save. Now that setting is saved permanently until we change it. So now the system knows that it's a 1,000-gallon tank. That way when you're on the main spray page and you reset your tank level, here, now it'll reset to the right number. So again, it's showing 91 gallons because that's how much is in the sprayer. But if I were to reset it, it's going to reset to whatever my tank size is. Just so everyone understands too, the system does not have a float reader in the tank. It doesn't actually know how many gallons are in there unless you remember to reset it. What it then does is as you spray gallons out of the hose reel and the boom, it subtracts from that number and it tells you how many gallons are left. If you do not reset your tank when you refill it, you will not have an accurate gallons reading. But don't worry, because even if it's a 305, you forget to reset it, you spray out 100 gallons, you know there's 200 gallons left or 205 gallons left, you can still manually reset your tank level down to what it actually is. I'm just going to reset this one back to my right size. I'm going to reset this one down to 305 as if it's full. So those are the settings you're going to be able to change there. The last one is the brine blend. So this is, again, is for the sake of your job reports. If you want to be able to accurately track what you're putting down on your sites, you can change your brine blend to whatever it is. If it's a straight brine, you just go to 100 to 0 and you know that it's straight salt brine. 95.5, 90.10, 85.15, 80.20. After any settings change, you have to hit the save button on the app. If you do not hit the save button, the settings will not be reflected. So just make sure that you hit the save button and you get this indication saying that your settings are saved. All of these other settings on the app are things that are set factory default. We don't want you changing those unless there's a specific reason, which should be discussed with a VSI technical service professional before you change any of the settings for your boom width, your minimum flow, your ice buster, PWM, or any other settings on the app. So that wraps up our conclusion of our VSI spray control app. Hopefully this helps give you a better understanding of the capability and the power of this system. Please reach out if you have any other questions, and we look forward to talking with you.